We're all familiar with the terrifying roars of the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, or whatever came out of the Indominus Rex in Jurassic World. But what if I told you that in reality, dinosaurs don't actually roar? The truth is, there isn't a movie or cartoon that has gotten dinosaur sounds right yet. So how can we know what dinosaurs sounded like? Well, we can try looking at the animals of today most closely related to dinosaurs. That'd be birds and crocodiles in that order. Crocodiles use a larynx, like humans, to make sounds. Birds use a syrinx to chirp and tweet. This is something unique to birds, though, and was developed after their little branch split in the dinosaur kingdom tree. Dinosaurs didn't have a larynx or a syrinx, and whatever voice boxes dinosaurs did have were made of fleshy material, which doesn't generally fossilize well. However, thanks to a stroke of luck, we can now give a good account of what a real dinosaur actually sounded like, which you're about to hear. And, thanks to a ton of research by one paleontologist, we also have an idea of what a Tyrannosaurus rex might sound like. You'll definitely want to stick around for that one, as it is far worse than whatever you might imagine, but in a very unique way. Let's go back a few million years. Imagine yourself standing in a vast prehistoric forest of the late Cretaceous period, surrounded by towering trees, as strange creatures move in the distance. Suddenly, you hear a deep, resonant sound fill the air, a low bellow that seems to shake the very ground beneath your feet. Surprisingly enough, it sounds almost beautiful? Contrary to what you might think, it's not coming from a predator like Tyrannosaurus or Spinosaurus, but from a peaceful herbivore. This sound is the call of Parasaurolophus. Now keep in mind, when you listen to these sounds, that they haven't been heard on this earth for over 66 million years. Now here's another version of the call which sounds notably different. I'll admit, it sounds a little funny, and if you close your eyes, you can almost imagine a Carnival cruise ship leaving port. But no, it's actually one of the closest audio replica we've got to the sound of a real dinosaur. Now, as you have heard, there are two versions of the Parasaurolophus's call. The difference comes from the first one being simulated without vocal cords, whilst the second one adds them in. Don't worry, we'll discuss this further later on, but first we need to go back in time a little. To fully understand how we got to this point, we need to go back about a century, in the early 1900s. First discovered in 1920 in Alberta, Canada, by a team of paleontologists led by William Parks, Parasaurolophus initially seemed like a discovery like many others. Even though it had a long, tube-like crest that made it a little intriguing, no one could have guessed that this dinosaur was eventually going to give us a glimpse into what these extinct creatures really sounded like. First of all, what is Parasaurolophus? This dinosaur is a member of the hadrosaur family, a group often referred to as duck-billed dinosaurs because of their distinctive flat, wide snouts. These dinosaurs were herbivores who lived in the subtropical environments of North America, about 75 million years ago during the late Cretaceous period. What truly sets Parasaurolophus apart, though, is its crest. It could reach up to 6 feet in length, extending from the back of the skull and forming a backward curve. Unlike many dinosaur crests, which were primarily used for visual display, the Parasaurolophus crest served a far more unique and fascinating function. Figuring out this function is what led to the discovery of what we believe to be Parasaurolophus's real voice. For years, though, paleontologists were uncertain of the true purpose of the Parasaurolophus crest. Was it used for attracting mates, for display in social groups? It wasn't until the 1990s, when advanced CT scanning and 3D modeling became available, that scientists began to unlock its acoustic potential. You might have guessed it by this point, it was a resonance chamber, perfect for producing sound. By studying the internal structure of the crest, researchers discovered that it was a hollow tube filled with a complex network of airways. These tubes were connected to the nasal passages, suggesting that air could be forced through them, much like blowing through a horn or trumpet. In other words, you'd have air rushing into the nostrils, passing through these chambers, and vibrating to produce a deep, resonating call. It's also interesting to note that the size and shape of the crest would have influenced the pitch and tone, creating a low-frequency sound that could potentially travel greater distances depending on how big the dinosaur's crest was. According to this theory, a baby Parasaurolophus's voice was probably much higher pitched and therefore probably pretty adorable to hear. Using modern technology, we've managed to simulate these sounds, and the recording suggests that Parasaurolophus likely produced a deep, haunting tone similar to the low rumble of a foghorn or even the songs of large whales today. Now, why is the recreation of the Parasaurolophus call such a big deal? Well, first of all, recreating the sound of an animal that's been extinct for millions of years is no small feat. It took decades of research, fossil evidence, and modern technology to give us the best guess at what Parasaurolophus might have sounded like. One of the breakthroughs came in 1997, 2 years after the discovery of Parasaurolophus. Computer scientists and paleontologists ran a CT scan on the skull at a local hospital in New Mexico, then used the resources of highly classified Sandia Labs, a major U.S. research and development facility that focuses on national security, to put the information into a computer and create a 3D model of the skull. The computer model could then simulate sounds that resulted when air was moved through it. The sounds you can hear in the clip are with and without vocal cords, as scientists still do not know if Parasaurolophus had vocal cords. Again, not so good with the fossilizing. The result was a low-frequency, almost haunting sound that, though not perfect, gives us a glimpse into the soundscape of the Cretaceous period. Speaking of not perfect, there is one important factor often overlooked in the recreation of the sound, and that is the impact of mucus and moisture. In living animals, moisture in the airways can alter sound resonance, affecting both pitch and tone. Mucus, which lines the respiratory system, could have dampened or amplified certain frequencies, making the call more complex or muffled. Without this soft tissue preserved in fossils, our reconstructions are based on dry models, so the actual sound produced by Parasaurolophus might have been more dynamic and nuanced in a living creature than what current simulations can replicate. So why did Parasaurolophus need to make such loud, far-reaching calls? As a social animal, communication would have been critical. Parasaurolophus likely lived in herds, and its low-frequency sounds would have helped individuals stay in contact with one another across vast, open landscapes. Think of modern elephants. They use low-frequency sounds, often below the range of human hearing, to communicate with other herd members miles away. Similarly, Parasaurolophus could use its calls to signal danger, locate other members of the herd, or perhaps even attract mates during the breeding season. Some paleontologists suggest that these calls could also have been used to assert dominance within the herd, much like how male deer use their vocalizations during mating season. Like we mentioned earlier, a larger, more powerful Parasaurolophus might have had a crest capable of producing deeper, more impressive sounds. This would allow it to stand out from the rest of the group and surely attract the right kind of attention from its female counterpart. What's also pretty fascinating is how Parasaurolophus might remind us of some of today's large animals. Consider the trumpeting of an elephant or the long melodic calls of a humpback whale. These animals, like Parasaurolophus, use low-frequency sounds to communicate across great distances. It's then very possible that the sounds made by these modern giants give us a small window into the prehistoric world. Speaking of giants, some more recent research was also conducted in an attempt to recreate the call of the infamous T-Rex. In 2017, Professor Julia Clark of Texas University was able to recreate the sound of a Tyrannosaurus. Given what we know about voice boxes and syrinxes, Professor Clark used an interesting method to figure things out. She used the call of a bird called Eurasian bittern, then used the sound of a Chinese crocodile. Both birds and crocodilians are archosaurs, the precursors to dinosaurs. As we know, birds are descended from dinosaurs. Crocodilians are cousins of dinosaurs, branching off of archosaurs at the same time as dinosaurs. This makes them cousins, sort of. By looking at birds, we can see what vocal structures evolved from dinosaurs, and by looking at crocodilians, we can get a partial glimpse at what came before dinosaurs. Combining them together, then scaling the sound up to match the size of the massive Tyrannosaurus rex, Professor Clark has given us the best look, or sound, of what the world's largest land carnivore sounded like. I know what you're thinking. That's a lot of information. Can I just hear it? Well, here it is in all its glory. Just a warning, you might need headphones to fully appreciate these sounds. Now, the thing about this sound is, as a human, you probably wouldn't hear it very well, but you would definitely feel it in your body. In a twisted way, this is what being completely screwed in the Cretaceous sounded like. Personally, I find this somehow much more ominous and terrifying than the classic Jurassic Park roar. So what have we learned today? While Hollywood has given us thrilling, heart-pounding roars for dinosaurs, the reality is far more nuanced and honestly, more fascinating. Dinosaurs didn't roar like lions or bears. Instead, they had unique ways of vocalizing, shaped by their anatomy and environment. Through groundbreaking technology and decades of research, we are only now beginning to uncover what these magnificent creatures really sounded like. The journey from fossils to soundscapes is an absolutely fascinating one that often goes completely unnoticed, and for the first Parasaurolophus discovery being almost 20 years old, it's not mentioned nearly as often as it should. While we may never have a perfect recreation of dinosaur sounds, each new piece of research brings us closer to understanding how these incredible animals communicated, lived, and survived. So the next time you hear a dinosaur roar in a movie, just remember, the real sounds of dinosaurs were likely more mysterious, haunting, and beautiful than anything we've ever imagined. Thanks for watching PaleoPath, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting prehistoric stories.